So Chanukah Sameach, everyone.
Sameach.
So there's machloket whether nowadays we need a shamash or not. Our Chanukah is paskin that we don't. But it's an interesting discussion because when the Gemara talks about how many candles we have to light, at least initially, so we know basic mitzvah, narish beito, mahadrim in a mahadrim, we'll paskin like Beit Hillel, we go mosif olech, right? So we go from 1 to 8. Spoke about that a number of times, but it's always confusing because how many candles do you light? You light the first night, you light 1. You light 1 plus 1, 2 plus 1. It's like the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur when you count. So where does it come from? Why do we have the shamash? The truth is that there are 2 reasons, 2 explanations that are brought as to why we need the shamash. It's based on 2 things. First of all, we know that when we light the candles, we don't light the Chanukah candles one from another. We use a separate candle to light, which is the shamash, right? The sugi on the Gemara: are you allowed to light? Rav and Shmuel: are you allowed to light madlikin min ner lener or not? In order to avoid that, we have a separate candle. The other reason is the Gemara has a sugi that says we are not allowed to benefit from the light of the candles. We all know this because we sing it, say it, sing it, whatever, in whatever tune. This is as opposed to Shabbos candles, by the way, where we are meant to get benefit from the lights, but in the terms of Hanukkah candles, we don't really get benefit from the lights themselves. The Gemara discusses: are you allowed to? You're not, for example, to count money by the lights of the candles, which you can't do, and therefore we have an extra light, the shamash, that if a person is going to be, there are those who say, person's going to be near the candles, when the candles were lit outside, so this was irrelevant because you'd be inside, your candles are outside, and there's no need, you aren't going to get benefit from them. But when the candles moved inside, so then all of a sudden a person has, and if we imagine when we didn't have electric lights in our homes and people had candles, which was what they used to light up the home, so now you have these candles, so there is a chashash that you're going to get benefit from them, and therefore you have the shamash, you have the extra light as well. Or there are those, Rashi puts it a little bit differently. The way Rashi writes it, he says that we need another candle. He writes lasot heker ledavar, in order that it should be recognizable. In other words, that the fact that there's a candle that's lit that we're using, it's recognizable that the other candles are not lit for our benefit, but they're lit specifically for the sake of the mitzvah. So the Shulchan Aruch writes, he says, Sarich ner acher. We need another candle which we can use its light, we can benefit from its light. That of course is the shamash. So the question that comes up nowadays, a number of questions come up regarding electricity and Chanukah lights. I think we discussed previously briefly if one could fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah lights with an electric light. Most poskim will say no. And the reason is that the candles needs to be, the takana was made, it has to be similar to the candles that were in the wicks and the flames that were in the menorah, and the Beit HaMikdash, and an electric light is not is different to that for all sorts of reasons. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach did say that with an incandescent light bulb, he ruled that you could fulfill the mitzvah in that way. And he said you could even say a bracha with it. So somebody who's in a hospital, we discussed a plane previously, if one is even obligated to light there. But if somebody's in a place where it's impossible to light a candle, according to that, there are ways of using electric lights. But the other question that comes up is that now that we have electric lights and nobody uses candles for to have lights inside, when do you use candles? When there's no electricity. But so if we have our lights on anyway, we're not getting benefit from the lights of the Chanukah candles. We're getting benefit from the electric lights, LED or whatever it is. So do you still need a shamash in such a scenario? So that's as you can guess, a machloket poskim. There are those who say Minchat Yitzchak, Rav Eliyahu, and others who say that you still need the shamash nowadays. But our Chanukah paskins like Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who says that meikar adin, right? Even according to Rashi, he says you would not need, strictly speaking, you would not need to have a shamash nowadays. But nonetheless, the minhag is that we still have one, and therefore we should still light it. But again, if a person's in whatever extenuating circumstances, the candle won't light, or you've run out of candles, you run out of oil, and you have enough. So you don't need to be concerned about the shamash. Just one other thing I'll say is that if we're using, particularly with oil, if you're lighting with candles, and you're using your shamash as your candle, and you're lighting it, and then you put it in the Chanukiah afterwards, so okay. But if your shamash is just there, right, like in this case, and you just have the oil there, you're not actually using it to light, so that's not actually part of the mitzvah. And therefore, when one begins, either one should light that shamash before one says the bracha, or one should light it at the end after you've lit the candles of the mitzvah. But if you say the bracha and then you light the shamash before you're lighting the actual candles, which is the mitzvah, so that could be a hefsek, and that should be, so the proper order would be either have it lit before or to light it at the end. Rabbi Kenigsberg Mincha Maariv Shiur Dec.